On today's show, there's movement on the Kevin Durant front. Kevin Durant issued an ultimatum to the Brooklyn Nets. We'll tell you why this provides more clarity to the Miami Heat going forward. Plus, Kyle Lowry addresses concerns over his conditioning and tells us why he's even more motivated for next season. It's an episode plump with Heat news you're not going to want to miss coming up on Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. We've got a bunch of Heat news to get to today. We'll get to Kyle Lowry's comments about his conditioning in a bit, but let's start with the latest on Kevin Durant. In a meeting with the Brooklyn Nets owner Joe Tsai over the weekend, Kevin Durant doubled down on his trade request, insisting that he's either traded before the start of the season or that coach Steve Nash and GM Sean Marks are fired. The Athletic's Shams Charania also reports that the Heat, as well as the Raptors and the Celtics, are the most likely trade partners, and that the Nets have made it clear that they will, quote, take every last asset from a team that trades for Durant, end quote. David, what do you think of the latest movement on the Durant front?
Well, I think it becomes pretty clear that Miami should not be in the market for Kevin Durant. Like everything has changed so dramatically over the last few years. And I know this is a conversation that we've had a number of times, and just looking at it from a macro perspective, like from them to acquire Kevin Durant, to cater to his every whim, him and Kyrie, to acquire James Harden, to trade James Harden, to bend over backwards, to bring in Steve Nash, the very person now that Kevin Durant wants fired as head coach. And they've done everything they could possibly do to make Kevin Durant's life simpler and easier and everything that he'd want it to be in Brooklyn. And now he's like, well, you know what? That's not enough. I don't want the Miami Heat to have anything to do with Kevin Durant and that roster, because who knows what happens. And if they wind up gutting this roster, which seems apparent that that's what it'll take in order for them to acquire KD in the first place, at some point he's going to get frustrated with Kyle Lowry, Jimmy Butler, somebody. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't like the weather. Maybe he thinks it's sunnier in Miami than it actually is. And once he experiences a couple of weeks in September when it's really, really rainy, he'll say, you know what? I don't like being in Miami anymore. That guy is just too prone to whimsy and just incredibly fanciful decision-making process where he can all of a sudden uproot himself and overturn a franchise at the drop of a hat. The Miami Heat have taken pride in their stability for almost 3 decades since Pat Riley has joined his franchise. As great a talent as KD might be, he is not the right fit for the Miami Heat.
I'll push back on this. If you can get Kevin Durant at a reasonable price, you get Kevin Durant. But that's where, like, I wouldn't just draw the line on the sand and saying no to Kevin Durant in any context. Though I agree with you, right? This guy is he has found a reason to be unhappy in each of the 3 franchises that he's played for so far, and it's all been very different reasons. He had Oklahoma City. He owned that town. He basically was the first star ever in that city from an NBA standpoint, and he got upset and he left. Why? Because he wasn't able to win at the level that he wanted to win at, and he got upset with Russell Westbrook and didn't want to play with him anymore, so he leaves. Goes to Golden State. Has everything he could possibly want, winning championships, great sports town, climbing the ladder in the NBA, and just it's not good enough. Goes to Brooklyn because he wants his own thing that he didn't necessarily have with the Warriors. It doesn't work out well, and after a couple of years, he wants to leave town. So I get it. I get the frustrations there. For me, it's just more of a every asset you have, huh? Like that just at some point, I don't care how good the player is. We could be talking about prime Michael Jordan. If Michael Jordan doesn't have a team to play with, he's not going 6-0 in the finals, okay? It's just not happening. If the Heat have to trade every last asset, and let's be clear on what that means. That means Bam Adebayo. It also means Tyler Herro. It also means all of their draft picks and possible swaps. That is every asset that they have. And if that's what the Nets are saying, that's what they're conveying to other teams that call. And Shams also reporting that every team in the league has called about Kevin Durant. If that's what they're telling teams, well, then forget it. And so here's where I'm at on this, David. This provided so much clarity as to what's actually going to happen with Kevin Durant, and he's staying in Brooklyn. That's what all this means. This is not a double down on the trade request. This is giving them a pathway into keeping him, because the new information in all this is, hey, trade me or else. But also, if you don't trade me, just fire Steve Nash and Sean Marks, and then we can move forward from there. And if you're Joe Tsai, yes, there's part of you that doesn't want to succumb to the whims of your superstar, who wanted Steve Nash hired in the first place, who got Kenny Atkinson fired in order to hire Steve Nash, and no longer wants Steve Nash. Yeah, maybe you're too proud to do that. But on the other hand, if it's between trading Kevin Durant for a haul that you are not going to get, let's be very clear. The Nets are not going to get every last asset in a Kevin Durant trade. There is not a trade on the market that satisfies that need. So if it's either trading him for pennies on the dollar, or now he is giving you this pathway into keeping him and potentially Kyrie Irving, and by the way, Ben Simmons, and by the way, they added Royce O'Neal and brought back Patty Mills and Nick Scott. Like, that's a good team if they're any bit happy at all, right?
Yeah.
And if Kyrie Irving is available, which is a big if, as always, but that's the pathway. And so I think what this means is that Kevin Durant will be playing for the Brooklyn Nets, and that Steve Nash and Sean Marks better be refreshing their resumes.
It's just, look, I know that Nash has certainly been fallible at points in time during his brief tenure as head coach. Sean Marks, I think, did everything he possibly could, and maybe there's intricacies and nuances to his role as a general manager that we haven't picked up on. But from the outside perspective, at the very least, it seems like he's done everything possible to build a culture, to build the right team around those two players. Like, he has acceded to every one of those whims. I just find it frustrating to see Kevin Durant say, well, that's not good enough. Now I don't want this. And I understand your perspective on, oh, now he's giving him the path to make things a little bit more clear for Josiah and the Brooklyn Nets ownership. But it's just really bizarre to just.
It is.
I don't know what to make of this guy. Like, we have talked about this before. It's like, what motivates him? And now that's why I hear your point also. Like, if for whatever reason the Nets change course and say, you know what, we'd be perfectly happy with just, Tyler Herro and a second round pick. Would you still want Kevin Durant on this roster? Because I'm starting to lean. Yeah, I know that. Like, and obviously that feels like that's the only decision. But at the same time, it's like he would find something to frustrate him in Miami, and it's just going to come sooner or rather than later. Who knows with him? But it's just very difficult to read exactly what motivates him, what keeps him engaged, what keeps him focused, and what keeps him from getting frustrated on a semi-annual basis at this point.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know what else Sean Marks could have done, because if Kevin Durant wants Sean Marks fired, then the thought would be that Sean Marks did something not to Kevin Durant's liking.
Right.
And yet Sean Marks has only done anything that Kevin Durant has wanted. I mean, even in trading James Harden, as soon as Kevin Durant got frustrated with James Harden, he was like, get this guy out of here. He was like, all right, we'll take Ben Simmons, who's just not going to play for us for a year. During a year where we could conceivably win the championship, right? Like, Brooklyn, for all their faults this season, and there were many of them, they were still one of the odds favorites to win the whole thing, even going into the playoffs. And so, maybe that's an issue with the Vegas odds. That's a different podcast. But it baffles me that if you're Kevin Durant, you're getting everything that you could have wanted. And what all of this basically means, David, is that Kevin Durant tried to do the LeBron James thing. He tried to do the LeBron thing where he's going to go to a franchise and just take it over, and he's going to win at the highest level. LeBron, we have seen do it. We've seen him do it in Cleveland. He won a championship there. He won a championship with the Lakers, right? LeBron has done it. He's been widely panned, and he's definitely not batting 100 or batting 1,000, but he's won a couple championships doing it. Yeah. He's won a couple of championships doing it. And Kevin Durant completely and just colossally failed at this in his first attempt. Hey, I learned how to be a championship in Golden State. That was my LeBron James in Miami kind of college years where I had to figure it out. They taught me how to win. And now I'm going to go to a new team, and I'm going to build this from the ground up because I'm a champion and I know how to do it. And I'm going to bring in my dude, Kyrie Irving, and we're going to win something. And we're going to run around the entire NBA. And what happened? It exploded. The ground caved underneath him because he just didn't know how to do it. And you're blaming Sean Marks and Steve Nash for that now? And so I'm with you. If I'm a team that's acquiring Kevin Durant, that makes me even less wanting to give up all of our assets for this guy, because if you're right, David, like, if he turns around, he's like, you know what? Just too cold in Toronto. You know what? Boston's just a little too racist for me. I don't want to be here anymore. Then now what do you have? You've traded all of your assets, and I know that everybody's going to say, well, then you just trade Kevin Durant for more assets. Okay, you trade Kevin Durant, who's unhappy for a fourth time, who is a year or 2 years or 3 years older now. Who knows? Like, you're not getting the value back that you.
I'm rooting for the Celtics and all this.
Kevin Durant.
I'm rooting for the Celtics. Pull the trigger, Boston. Come on. Brad Stevens, you know we've always loved you on this podcast. This is your opportunity to cement your legacy in Beantown. I think it's the right move.
I like the reverse psychology. It's a good idea. Let's talk about what it actually would cost. Let's talk about what that is. The all of the assets on the table. And there's some other interesting things from this report, including basically, when we're talking about the clarity of all of this, a hard deadline to when the Heat could, or any team could possibly trade for Kevin Durant. That's coming up next. Today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar. If you haven't tried Built Bar Puffs yet, well, you're depriving yourself of one of life's greatest joys. And guess what? There's a new flavor. It's delicious, indulgent cookie dough covered in chocolate. That's right. Built has done it again. Let me introduce you to your new favorite, cookie dough chunk puffs. They have a light and chewy texture, real cookie dough chunks, and of course, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. All of the joys of eating cookie dough without the hassle of making it. Plus, it's healthy for you. Cookie dough chunk puffs are only 160 calories, and they have a whopping 15 grams of protein. Run to Built.com to snag a box for you and the family. It's the perfect treat, or if you really like it, you can find a good hiding place and just hoard them for yourself. Like all Built Bars, the new cookie dough chunk puff is covered in 100% real chocolate. That means they're healthy and tasty. Chocolate-covered cookie dough with a light, fluffy texture. What's great about Built is that all of their bars are made with collagen protein, which absorbs in your body more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits. Eat something that tastes good and is good for you. You are going to love the new cookie dough chunk puff. Whether you need a snack for your workout, a late night treat, or just need to grab a quick bite, Built is the perfect option for your protein bar, and they taste better than a candy bar. So ditch the calories, the fat, and the sugar, and grab yourself a Built bar. Go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off on your next order. Again, use that promo code LOCKED15. Back here with Locked On Heat, talking about the Kevin Durant news. We will get to the latest on Kyle Lowry and his conditioning later on. But when Shams reports that it's going to take every last asset for a team to trade for Kevin Durant, he also mentions that it's the Heat, the Celtics, and the Raptors as the most likely destinations to try to get Kevin Durant. You and I could debate the Kevin Durant stuff. The Heat have a price in mind with Kevin Durant. They have not given up on the Kevin Durant stuff. That much has been evident from this reporting and from the things that you and I have reported on this show. The Heat are still hopeful that there is a world in which they can have Kevin Durant on their roster for next season. Again, we can have our own issues with that, but it kind of seems like that's where they're going. Every last asset looks like Bam Adebayo, Tyler Herro, 3 first-round picks, if they can unlock the one that's owed to OKC. And there's some pick swaps in the middle, probably about 2, I think, that they can include. Yeah. So if that is what and look, and you can and if Brooklyn really wanted every last asset, they'd be like, we want a Gabe Vincent or Omer Yurtseven or a Struz or something like that. Yeah. They could always ask for something like that too. But that's basically what we're talking about. Bam, Tyler, the picks. Obviously, you've made it clear that that is way too much of a price. You and I are on the same page. The Bam Adebayo thing to me is a non-starter. And so far, by the way, for the Miami Heat, it has also been a non-starter. But you mentioned like Tyler Herro on a second-round pick. Like, where would you really draw the line? If you're Pat Riley, if you're the Heat, like, where would you be drawing the line here?
You mean as far as drawing the line for the low end or on the high end?
Like, what's your best offer? That your final best offer for Kevin Durant?
I mean, unfortunately, I think it's basically what's been reported as far as the proposed package. Tyler Herro picks whatever salary filler needs to be included there. Like, you can part with a Duncan Robinson because he becomes somewhat superfluous. You can part with Tyler, unfortunately. And again, yes, the number of picks, because those picks probably decrease in value given the fact that you're going to be contending for a championship for the next few years that Durant's playing at an all-time level. So I think it's okay to trade those picks. You're fine with it. And you roll the dice for the future. Who knows what happens down the road. And I've drawn the line of Bam Adebayo. That's basically it. I know that that's probably an unpopular opinion. I know some fans think that Bam Adebayo should be included there, that we overrate Bam at some points. I'm not so sure. I agree. I think you're sacrificing a lot for the possibility of winning a title over the next couple of seasons, and there's no guarantee of that. Yes, on paper, you might have the more talented team. This doesn't feel the same, with the same kind of surety that Miami experienced during the Big Three. At that point in time, you had LeBron James, a clear number one best player in the league at that point in time.
In
you
his
also
prime,
had Dwayne.
at 28 years old.
You had Dwayne also in his prime, Chris also in their prime.
Right.
All three younger, hungry, looking for a chance to achieve something. That's not this. This is, Kyle older. This is Jimmy older. It's KD older and already having won. It's not the same kind of thing.
Right.
There's a lot less stability with that. And even then, when you think about it, the Big Three era only yielded a 50%, success rate when you look at the number of titles they were able to achieve, which is fantastic, and still not as dominant as, say, the Golden State Warriors and their short-term dynasty. So
I mean, they won 2 out of 3 with Kevin Durant, so they still won the same amount of titles even with KD, and maybe the best talent roster we've ever seen assembled, right? And look, I'm with you. And with that Big Three era, that window was not 5, not 6, not 7, and we all sort of pan LeBron for doing that. But back then,
it could have happened.
Logical. Yeah. That seemed realistic. This team is going to dominate for the next half decade at the very least. And of course, we know how it ended up playing out, and that speaks to, like you're saying, how difficult it is. And even if you add Kevin Durant to this roster with Jimmy Butler, it is so far from a guarantee. I don't even know if that team is the best team in the Eastern Conference if you have to give up Bam Adebayo, right? It's up there. I don't know if they're head over heels better than Milwaukee. That team's deep. They have probably the only player who is clearly better than Kevin Durant.
Well, let's look at it.
Even at health.
Let's look at it. Yeah, if you have Giannis versus Durant, right? Basically lining it up that way. Middleton versus Butler and Holiday versus Kyle Lowry. That's not as close as you'd like in Miami's favor. Might have a slight edge in Durant, but even then, given the
only edge is Jimmy Butler over Chris Middleton. That's the only edge. Giannis is better than Durant. Drew Holiday's better than Kyle Lowry.
Is he though? Come on. I mean, we're kind of over. Well, I don't know. Better.
At the very maybe they're tied. Call it a tie. Call it a wash.
I could do that. I mean, like Durant was playing at an MVP level before he got hurt midway through the season, and everybody kind of overlooked that.
So is Giannis.
We want to focus on his age. Yeah. Giannis is younger, less prone to injury, things of that
sort.
Yeah, you're right
at this point.
Yes. Butler over Middleton, yes. And I'm sure some Bucks fans would probably argue that, though. And then Holiday over Lowry seems pretty likely at this point.
Yeah, that's easy, too.
Yeah.
But they have so much more depth too. Like not now, but like if the Heat were going to make this deal, then Milwaukee would have more depth. And Milwaukee's not even that deep of a team. That more speaks to how much Miami would have to give up in a deal like this. Look, if I'm the Heat, if Brooklyn asks for Bam, Tyler, and all of the first-round picks with the swaps, you can't do it. Even if you're willing, you have to at least keep something. You have to keep Tyler or even one first-round pick or something. You have to give yourself some kind of backstop, some sort of insurance policy in the case that Kevin Durant doesn't work out. You can't mortgage 100% the entire future, because if you give up all the picks, Bam and Tyler Herro, you have no way of getting elite young talent. And yeah, you could say, well, they'll just find another Gabe Vincent, another Strus, or whatever. Fine, find all those players. You need like elite lottery level talent in the NBA at some point. You're not going to be able to get that if you're giving up all of your means to acquire that. So I'm with you. I would never trade Bam. I don't think that you can build a championship roster. And I always say this, when you're trading for Kevin Durant, you're not trading for Kevin Durant. You're trading to win a championship, right? You're not just trying to get him. You're trying to go win a title. So you have to look at your team post a KD trade and ask yourself, can they win? Do we feel good enough that this team can win a title that is worth mortgaging the future? Not just giving yourself a chance, but worth that opportunity cost of, hey, we're not going to have any good young players for probably the next 10 years. Is that okay with us? And that's really what we're looking at. In terms of the other teams, Boston and Toronto, the other teams that are mentioned here, for Toronto, all reports indicate that they're not willing to give up Scotty Barnes, and they're not moving off of that stance, just like Miami isn't going to move off of the Bam Adebayo thing. Again, we'll see. We'll see what this latest report means.
I find that to be a little ridiculous. That's where I can't speak to what Raptors fans feel, but at the same time, like it just even on the surface, from my perspective here, I feel like that's a little. I don't think Scotty Barnes, as good as he is as intrinsic to their success next year as Bam Adebayo would be to Miami. And if you include Barnes, I don't think you have to sacrifice as much depth as Miami does by sacrificing Bam Adebayo.
Maybe.
So for
Unless,
them,
but like, what does every last asset from the Raptors look like?
Oh,
Would they really ask for Scotty Barnes and Siakam or Van Vliet and all the first round picks and some other young pieces like Gary Trent or
Who's
whoever?
going to do this? Who's going to do this?
No,
that
there's
can
no way.
afford to do it.
There's no way they do that. Boston, right? We know what that offer is going to be. They've said no on Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart, that they're not willing to give up both, but that's what that looks like, right? All the assets looks like, hey, it's Jaylen Brown, it's Marcus Smart, and it's all the picks that they can offer, which is about as many as I think Miami has to offer, if I'm not mistaken, or something, maybe one more that they
Three
could do.
first rounders and a couple of pick swaps also, yeah.
So, and if Boston's not doing it, then I ask, where's the trade for Kevin Durant? And of all these three teams, I think the Celtics are really the only team that could actually do it and still have enough depth to win a championship. Like, even if you move Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart, you still have Jason Tatum plus Kevin Durant. So you have your young star, where if you're Miami, you're not going to have a young star post Durant if you make that deal. If you're Boston, you could still have 24-year-old Jason Tatum just to take the baton from Kevin Durant. Plus, you still have Robert Williams. You still have Al Horford for another year or two playing at a high level. You've got other guys, right?
Yeah.
But
Brogdon, Horford, et cetera. I mean, you've got a lot there to continue to build on, which makes them, even right now, probably the best team in the Eastern Conference just because of their incredible depth and the fact that they have that talent to boot.
But they're like already arguably the best team in the Eastern Conference, right?
That's what I'm saying.
So it's just like, so if you're the Celtics, is it even worth it, considering that you still have young talent and things moving forward, even if you do this trade? I don't.
Oh yeah.
That's why we keep coming back to this. What do you think is most likely? Because I still think that what I think the real news here is everybody wants to focus on, hey, Miami, Boston, Toronto, every last asset. Like, that's what's going to be grabbing headlines. Kevin Durant doubles down on trade demand. That's going to be the headline across the ticker. But what I think the real news is here is that he gave the Brooklyn Nets a pathway into keeping him. It just looks like firing their head coach and their GM.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. If the Boston offer, and remember that Boston offer, I think reported by Brian Windhorst, had been on the table for weeks and hadn't been accepted, they're not willing to accept that deal. Forget it. It's over. It's done. Right now, it's like, look, you couldn't find the right deal for me. I get it. But then you've got to fire everybody else. So I think from the Brooklyn Nets ownership perspective, the next step is pretty clear, is that they're going to have to clean house in that front office and try to do what they can. I wonder if they rehire Kenny Atkinson, right? He drop?
He did.
I wonder if they can lure him out of Golden State so he can come back and take over. Who's the right? That's where we should talk about. Who's the right coach?
Come on, you know who this is going to be, David. You know exactly where this is going.
No, I don't.
Mark
Who
Jackson, baby.
Yes,
That's where this is going.
Perfect. New York native. Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
You love it in the fact that it's going to
it's
completely bomb.
I wouldn't want to cover that team.
Not as a Nets team. Not as a Nets fan. You don't love it. Yeah.
No.
All right, let's get some of this Kyle Lowry news here. And he says he's even more motivated to win a championship next season. We'll tell you why here on Locked On Heat. Back here with Locked On Heat. Look, if you haven't checked out the 2006 NBA Finals rewatch series, please go and check it out. We worked really hard on it. We're really proud of it. We're having a lot of fun with it. Our Game 4 rewatch comes out Wednesday, but we have this exciting interview with Antoine Walker that went up on YouTube and in your podcast feeds on Monday, and he was phenomenal, David. I mean, he was great. He was really generous with his time and with his stories and his honesty. And if you're a Heat fan, even if you're not super into this 2006 rewatch thing, it was a wide-ranging interview. We covered a lot of topics, and if you're a Heat fan, you're going to love it, point blank.
Perhaps one of the best interviews that we've ever had on the show. Like,
the best one.
Frankness, the way he talked about his teammates, his openness about the shift from Pat Riley to Stan Van Gundy, like, it was just unbelievable. Like, all the details that he got into, a lot of nuance there, and just a great overall perspective about a pivotal moment in franchise history.
I still laugh at his Shaq story with the baby oil.
That's amazing.
That's a good
really
one.
Good.
Speaking of interviews, during an interview on Vince Carter's podcast, which did you know he had a podcast? Every player has a podcast now. Kyle Lowry.
I like all the hashtag new media here. They're kind of horning in on our job, you know? That's okay.
I know. We would have liked the Lowry interview. Whatever.
Yes, we would.
He's invited. Kyle Lowry responded to the recent questions regarding his conditioning, saying that it doesn't bother him, but that he's motivated to be even better for the Heat next season. This on the heels of an interview he gave to reporters during a golf event in Canada a couple weeks ago, saying that, you know, the personal issues that troubled him last year, there's something that's still around that he's still dealing with. But again, speaking to the conditioning stuff, that was part of the issue last year, was that he couldn't really get into a rhythm, but that he's more, motivated this offseason despite all the personal concerns to get into world-class shape. The way that Pat Riley basically told him to do at the end of the season media conference. But here's the quote he told to Vince Carter. This is from Kyle Lowry. Every year I find ways to motivate myself. Right now, I'm even more motivated just because I had a chance to make it to another championship. I'm in year 16. I got one championship. I've been in the playoffs a lot. But there's something about that championship that I want another one. It's just what I play for. Of course, now we've seen the videos making the rounds on social media. Lowry working out at UFC gyms, looking noticeably slimmer, leaner. What do you make of Lowry's comments, David?
Well, I'm actually looking up right now. Mostly a dark meat. It's been described as pleasantly gamey by most accounts, and some people suggest that it tastes like wild duck. I'm talking about crow because everybody's going to be eating it. Because I've been talking about this team being better than they were last year, specifically because of the growth of Tyler Herro, but also Kyle Lowry, a motivated Kyle Lowry. And I'm a firm believer that I want the receipts. I'll take the blame if it falls apart next season. I will absolutely take it. But I also want the credit because I think that Lowry is going to be motivated. I think he was just too good of a player. Heat fans were not expecting what they got. They wanted a superstar, right? Because the idea was, he was the best player in NBA free agency. He was the biggest name. Yes, he won a championship, etc. Casual Heat fans expected him to be like a move akin to like acquiring LeBron James. He was never that. He's a setup player, but a very, very damn good one. A Hall of Fame level setup player who can still take over games on occasion offensively. Unfortunately, between the personal issues, between the injury, and perhaps being slightly out of shape by Heat standards, which is saying something, the production wasn't nearly what it was supposed to be. Now, a year removed, hopefully with the personal issues resolved to a certain degree where he doesn't have to focus as much on them as he did last season, in better shape and understanding his role a little bit better, Kyle Lowry is going to be a dynamic offensive force and a great defensive player. And I think he's going to turn this Heat team into a really productive offensive team in general. Not a juggernaut, not there. But I think a really great offensive team, and I think he's going to be fantastic. And Heat fans are going to remember why he's a Hall of Fame player, why they made this acquisition in the first place, why they're willing to pay him the kind of money that he's getting in Miami.
This has been a pattern over Kyle Lowry's career, dating back to Toronto. He has on years and he has off years. He has on years and he has off years. And last year, unfortunately for him, was an off year. I think I'm with you. I don't disagree with anything you're saying. I think next year is going to be one of his on years, and it's going to be a better year than last year, most certainly. I would like to circle back on one thing. You're willing to take the blame if it doesn't work out, and you're talking about eating crow. So can we work out a challenge that if Kyle Lowry is not...
I'm a vegetarian, Wes. I want to.
I know you're a vegetarian, but they have a tofurkey. Can we make like a tofu crow that you have to eat if Kyle Lowry doesn't meet expectations?
I will take a tofurkey roast. I will soak it in black ink or something like that. And I will leave it out in the sun so it just gets really funky and nasty, and then I will eat it. Absolutely. Shaped like a crow. I don't know. Somebody with woodworking skills can possibly take like a tofurkey loaf and make it look like a crow. I will eat it 100%, gladly, on this show. Center court even. We'll arrange with Heat PR. I'm sure they'll allow it.
They'll love it. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
We never got the Fin Mints last year, but maybe we'll get the tofu crow. Hey, this is on record, Heat fans.
Crowfurkey. Crowfurkey. I love it. I love it.
All right.
Nice.
That'll do it for us today. Remember to like and subscribe to Locked On Heat on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. For your second listen, get up to date on the latest news and rumors in the NBA in just 30 minutes every day with Locked On NBA. Locked On NBA, your daily NBA update in just 30 minutes. Thanks for joining me, David.
You got it, Wes.